So, you want to build a medieval cathedral. Here's what you're signing up for. A single construction project that will consume up to a fifth of your region's entire economy. A build time longer than a human life. Your grandchildren will die before the roof goes on. And a very real chance the whole thing collapses, because the tallest cathedral vault anyone ever attempted stood for exactly 12 years before it came down. And yet, in the 1200s, cities across Europe were racing each other to do this. Bishops committed years of their own income. Towns spent themselves to the brink, on purpose. Why? Because a cathedral wasn't what you think it was. It wasn't an expense. And to understand what it actually was, you need to know why. In 1538, it took the King of England 26 wagons to haul the profits out of just one of them. We'll get to the wagons. First, you need to see the bill. Let's clear up the biggest myth first. Cathedrals were not built by faithful volunteers hauling stones for free. That image is mostly myth. The people on your scaffolding are professionals. Master masons, the medieval world's equivalent of a star architect and structural engineer in one person, moved from city to city, negotiated contracts, and were paid accordingly. Below them, stonecutters, carpenters, glaziers, blacksmiths, mortar makers, hundreds of skilled workers on payroll for decades. And when the money stopped, they put down their tools and walked to the next city, every time. So, how much does all of this cost? One economic study looked at the Paris Basin, the region around Paris, between 1100 and 1250. In those 150 years, by its count, the area built more than 1,400 Gothic churches. The estimated cost, an average of over 20% of the entire regional economy, sustained for a century and a half, a fifth of everything a society produces, poured into buildings. For a single great cathedral, modern reconstruction estimates run into the hundreds of millions of dollars. One detailed study priced rebuilding Chartres, stone for stone, at more than $500 million in today's money. And that's a building with no elevators, no wiring, no plumbing, just stone, glass, and labor. Which raises the obvious question. Medieval Europe was poor, famines were regular, most people never touched a gold coin in their lives. So who exactly is paying for this? Your first guess is probably the king. Wrong. Kings donated occasionally, a window here, a portal there, but as a rule, crowns didn't bankroll cathedrals. Royal money built castles. Castles paid for themselves in territory. Second guess, the Pope. Also wrong. Rome didn't send money to building sites. Rome sent something far more valuable. We'll come back to that. In reality, a cathedral ran on a dedicated financial machine. The industry had a name for it, the Fabric Fund. In Latin, the Fabrica. A standing account, legally separate from the bishop's personal wealth that existed for one purpose, feeding the construction site. And it had 4 intake pipes. Pipe 1, the tithe. Everyone in the diocese owed the church a tenth of what they produced. Grain, wool, livestock. A slice of that flowed into the Fabric Fund. Every year, forever. Guaranteed subscription revenue, collected before anyone asked whether they wanted to subscribe. Pipe 2, donations from the top. Nobles and rich merchants paid for prestige placement. A chapel with their name on it. A stained glass window showing their family at prayer. At Chartres, entire windows were sponsored by trade guilds. Bakers, furriers, wheelwrights. Their logos are still up there, in glass, 800 years later. Medieval advertising with an 800-year runtime. Pipe 3 is where it gets interesting. Remember that thing Rome sent instead of money? Indulgences. A document, backed by the full authority of the church, promising relief from punishment in the afterlife in exchange for a contribution to the building. Read that again as a business model. A product with zero production cost, no supply limit, and demand built into the belief system of an entire continent. Cathedral fundraisers took indulgences on the road, touring the countryside, collecting coins from villagers who would never once see the finished building. But here's the thing, pipes 1 through 3 only keep the site alive. They cover payroll, they buy stone. The 4th pipe is the entire reason the building exists. And to see it, you need to watch a city burn. On the night of June 10th, 1194, fire tore through the city of Chartres and gutted its cathedral. When the smoke cleared, little remained standing beyond the crypt and the west front. You'd expect a city to treat this as ruin. Chartres treated it as a crisis for one specific reason, and it wasn't the building. Since the year 876, Chartres had owned a relic called the Sancta Camisa, a tunic believed to have been worn by the Virgin Mary. That single piece of cloth was the basis of the city's entire visitor economy. Thousands of pilgrims a year traveled to see it. They needed beds, food, candles, souvenirs. The relic was the anchor tenant. The city was the shopping mall. 3 days after the fire, priests emerged from the underground crypt carrying the tunic, intact. Watch what happens next, because this is the whole business in one move. A papal representative stood in the ashes and declared the relic's survival a sign. The Virgin herself wanted a greater church. Donations flooded in from across Europe. The new cathedral, the one standing today, went up in roughly 26 years. Blistering speed for the era. A fire that destroys the store but spares the product isn't a disaster. It's a renovation opportunity. Because in economic terms, a cathedral is not just a monument. It's purpose-built infrastructure for a pilgrimage economy. A machine for converting a relic into permanent, recurring revenue. And if you want to see that machine running at full capacity, go to Canterbury. In 1170, 4 knights murdered Archbishop Thomas Becket inside his own cathedral. Within months, miracles were being reported at his tomb. Within years, Canterbury was the most popular pilgrimage destination in England. We know what that was worth, because the monks kept books. In the early 1200s, offerings left at Canterbury's shrines averaged around £426 a year, at a time when the cathedral's total annual revenue was about £1,400. More than 30% of the entire institution's income came from visitors leaving money at one man's tomb. So in 1220, the cathedral did what any operator does with a top-performing asset. It upgraded the display. Becket's remains were moved into a golden, jewel-covered shrine in a purpose-built chapel, and the monks kept it locked under a wooden cover, raised only at viewing times. Scarcity engineered, so that seeing the shrine felt like a privilege. They sold souvenir badges. They accepted gifts of gold and sapphires, and the treasure kept compounding for 3 centuries. Then, in 1538, Henry VIII broke with Rome, ordered the shrine destroyed, and confiscated everything. By contemporary account, moving the accumulated wealth of that one shrine out of Canterbury took 26 wagons. That's the number from the beginning of this video. 26 wagon loads of gold and jewels. Not the church's money, not the king's. 350 years of accumulated visitor revenue, generated by a single tomb, inside a building designed around it. Which sounds like a business you'd want in on. So before you go hunting for a saint of your own, you should know that this industry has 2 ways of ruining its owners. The first is overbuilding. Cathedrals competed on height, because in this business, height was marketing. The taller the vault, the greater the glory, and the bigger the draw. In 1225, the town of Beauvais decided to beat everyone. Their choir vault topped out at 48 meters, the tallest Gothic vault ever built, a record it still holds. It was finished in 1272. In 1284, it collapsed. The town spent decades rebuilding. Then, in 1569, it tried again, this time with the tallest tower in the world. That collapsed too, in 1573. Beauvais never recovered. To this day, the cathedral has no nave. It's the industry's permanent cautionary tale, a flagship store that bet everything on spectacle and never opened the full building. The second failure is simpler. The money runs out. Cologne started its cathedral in 1248. Construction stopped around 1560. Funding gone, enthusiasm gone. A medieval crane abandoned on the unfinished tower for so long it became part of the city's skyline. Cologne wasn't completed until 1880. 632 years, start to finish. Because a cathedral doesn't have a construction schedule, it has a cash flow schedule. The building rises exactly as fast as the revenue allows, and not 1 stone faster. So knowing all of this, the costs, the collapses, the 6th century delays, was the bet actually worth taking? Time to pull it all together and answer the actual question. For the city, overwhelmingly, yes. A working pilgrimage cathedral was the medieval version of owning an airport, a stadium, and a bank at once. It pulled thousands of visitors a year into a town they had no other reason to enter, and every one of them spent money twice, once at the shrine, once in the streets around it. The tithe covered the operating costs, the relic generated the profit, and the asset appreciated for centuries, right up until a king showed up with wagons. And if you think this model died with the Middle Ages, look at Barcelona. The Sagrada Familia broke ground in 1882 and topped out its final tower in 2026, 144 years later, funded by no government at all. It runs on ticket sales, nearly 5 million paying visitors a year, over 134 million euros in annual revenue, roughly half of it poured straight back into construction. The visitors are financing the building they came to see. 800 years later, it's still the same machine. The relic changed. The model never did. So yes, you can build a cathedral. Just understand what you're really building. To the people inside it, a house of God. To the city that pays for it, something else entirely. A destination, with a very long payback period.